Good evening, everyone. I'll be repeating the introduction and instructions for the new attendees. I'm Vallabi Jalan, and I'm the convener for this evening on behalf of the collective Curating for Culture. I finished my graduation in interior design and then a diploma in public space design from Shrishti Institute of Art Design and Technology. Currently, I'm exploring the process of archiving through a project on my grandmother's stories, which was an outcome of a workshop I attended by Ishita. We get started, may I please request you all to ensure that your devices are on mute, your WhatsApp tab on the browser is closed, and any electronic devices around you are on silent or no sound mode. These sessions are being recorded and screenshots will be taken for documentation and dissemination purposes. Hope we have your consent for the same. Curating for Culture has emerged out of collaborations and initiatives explored by Ishita Shah. Ishita is a designer, historian, and curator currently based out of Bangalore. I would now request Ishita to tell us a bit more about curating this series and then introduce our third group of speakers, Dinesh, Shalini, and Bani.
Thank you, Vallavi. So I think, yeah, I mean, not to even repeat myself, I think for at least the older participants and listeners, I will just pick on from what Vallavi mentioned. So I did basically 3 workshops on curating family archives during the lockdown, basically. And I mean, I started with only wanting to do one, and then it led to another, and led to another. And that's something that sort of extended my practice from institutional archiving to community archiving to taking archiving into the household. And so this sort of binds what I would say that our practices have been geared around cultural preservation, creative exchanges, and community engagement. Now, this series is sort of an outcome of that kind of an understanding that, okay, what are the new spaces for engagement that one could build around archiving? And what are the 4 themes, or what are the themes under which this kind of an engagement would be curated? One is very clear that we want to look at India, we want to look at South Asia, we want to look at the global South and ask certain pertinent questions. So one of the first themes is South Asia, India and Archives, where we had this time Dr. Siddiqui from Columbia University, where she spoke about architecture as a form of knowledge. The second idea was to open up archival spaces and projects. So we invited Brunda Pathare to address a day in the life of an archivist, which was on 9th. And she basically took us through an exciting journey of setting up an archive, but also making it accessible. The third very obvious thing which sort of has been coming about is the aspect of digital archiving, but also not just because digital is the new way forward, but also because it allows you to interact, it allows you to build more stories, and sort of go beyond the institutional narrative of looking at the archival collection. For the same, we basically reached out to Venkat first, who is the head of archives at NCBS, and he put us in touch with Team Janastu, who will be taking us through the back end of a very exciting project and a lot more that they do. And then the final theme is around empowering the local. So what does it mean for one person to engage with an archival collection? And we have artist Smriti Mehra joining us on 13th of June. So these 4 themes also sort of emerge from one's own practice and a lot of engagements around these different subjects and the need to open up or to create an exposure around these subjects. So, and then at the end of this week, we would want to come back together, connect these themes, speak to each other about it, but more importantly, connect what we have heard over the week, sort of cross-pollinate across the different speakers' perspectives, and see what we take away as a way forward for archival practices across the country, which surely is changing quite a bit has changed quite a bit over the last decade. So that's our plan, and we have been very excited because I mean, excitement keeps growing because a lot more people keep joining, and the diversity of participants is making this very, very potent. So thank you all for joining us for one more session here. And about Team Janastu, I had met them in 2017 when Aliya Rizvi, a fellow historian, connected us. So Dinesh, Bhanu, and Shalini had come to Shrishti to address the students of one of the open studios which I was facilitating. It was called Contesting Heritage. And they introduced us to the world of possibilities around community and digital archiving. I think after that, there was no cutting ties or forgetting them. Since then, our paths have crossed on so many occasions. And we keep engaging on related projects or conversations, and we find a lot more people to work with as a collective. So it was a matter of delight to discover from Venkat Srinivasan, the head of archives at National Center for Biological Sciences, to know that they are again the ingenious minds behind the digital exhibition 13 Ways of Seeing. I have been speaking about it. It has been a reference or a project a lot of people refer to, and we find it quite intriguing from a space of archiving and creating digital exhibits. So we have them with us today on request to tell us a lot more about behind the scenes of trying to curate and create something so complex but interesting, and hopefully open up conversations about their larger practice as well. So thank you, Bhanu, Dinesh, Shalini, for accepting our invitation and making time for this. Over to you.
Hi guys, good evening. Ishita, thanks for that wonderful introduction. So, I'm Banu, and yeah, that's one of the names I'm known by. And I'm a developer working at Janastu since 2013-14. And when I said developer, I think if you had your uh, image going on, like my computer screen will be black color with green text flowing. I'm not that guy. I just happen to be a developer. Yeah, that guy's sitting next to me this side. They are hackers. So yeah, I'd like to just give a small introduction to Janastu as well. Janastu is a 2 decades old NGO, non-profit, and we have been working with many grassroots non-profits, NGOs, and other community organizations to provide software services, technical support, consultation, and excuse me, handholding for their technical needs. And yeah, we are a small team. So that's why I said these roles are just, if you have seen Patal Lok, it's like need to know basis. So I used it first. So what I mean to say is that we're a small team. So whatever a project needs, we all put together all our resources to do things and get it done. Today we would like to talk about our experience with working with archives. So the first disclaimer I would like to give is we are not archivists. So we don't come from the archiving background. Actually, neither do I come from computer science background. So it's all like that. It's like learned on the job. It's like while we are walking, we have learned many things. But our journey started with an interesting project with cultural heritage. It's project by DST, Indian Digital Heritage Hampi. That was our first probably hands-on with archiving tools and technologies, which we were not consciously touching because our background was with community knowledge and community softwares. So we were more into storytelling for communities, narrativizing documentation, basically to help improve access of material and artifacts. Stories are the linking thread. So although archivists like the metadata and descriptions and all of these things, but when we talk about the end user, I think stories touch hearts. So that's how we started our journey, and then then Dinesh happened to meet Venkat Srinivasan, who is at archives at NCBS, and then we got to know about this interesting project. And I'm
Yeah.
really glad that
No, Venkat was unique because he moved from wherever to NCBS to tell stories more than archives. I mean, it felt like he was archivist, but his first thing was to be a storyteller, and that was the big match for us. So that was why we kind of pursued him for a while, and then things happened.
correct. Yeah, definitely. We didn't pitch in. We didn't jump in because it was an archival project, but because it was a storyteller who wanted handholding with getting on with his project. And at that time, I think NCBS didn't yet have an archive. So it was Venkat's research in his laptop with his peers at NCBS, and a lot of material just still going around. But the 25th anniversary of NCBS was just ahead, and that's when this project was on if you have to say on a rush. Yeah,
More rights than
I think never mind. I think
Yeah, we got your screen.
okay,
Okay, cool.
great. So yeah, I was saying. So I was saying that's how we met Venkat, and it was in the year of the 25th anniversary of the NCBS. So there was no archive. There was a lot of material. Research was still ongoing. Content was under work, and then there was a lot of content. And then the initial meetings, I think, was the most interesting ones, because we had a lot of brainstorming, and that's how the sandbox tools, which I'll come to later, came about. It came about in our discussions. Every discussion we had many things to add to basically the aim also was, I think, for Venkat, it was to show the possibilities of what archives can mean, apart from what institutions have in their perspectives about archives. So, he had his idea ready with the narratives and his research work, oral history, recordings with many people across the pyramid of NCBS, and many stories. I would now, I think, the page that you're seeing on your screen, I'll just go full screen. I just learned today what's the shortcut key to go full screen. Right. So this is the home page. The picture you're seeing, before the picture, I think I would like to show the curatorial note by Venkat. And by the way, yeah, this site, you can bookmark it. Don't think about going through it or skimming through it in while there's nice content, and there's enough content that you might want to come back later after we finish this presentation. And like you see, the idea, 13 ways why and all that is mentioned here. And then there is a description about the picture you're seeing behind. It is part of a sandbox tool, which we call Ephemera, which has a few pictures and descriptions. The one that has been pulled up right now, if you can see the caption here, um, at the end of it, it says, so every time you refresh your screen, there's randomly another image that is picked. I don't know, I can try to refresh and see if that randomness would pick another new image. It did. So yeah, the idea here was to make the user feel that as in an ephemera, like there is a interesting object from the archive. The curator wants the user to encounter, and that was the idea of this. We call these widgets, all these tools that we had designed for the project. And now in the top, each of these icons you see are the narrative themes. So these six, sorry, my math is bad. There's 7 narrative themes. Each one of them is structured with chapters inside. And every narrative theme has an introduction, and then there's a set of chapters. So though the this is about NCBS, there was a greater narrative that I feel Venkat can throw light on it later. A narrative that history of science in India. So he thematized these themes in a very larger narrative in that structure, that India and the story of science in India, story of biology in India. And it all starts with creating this identity for the institution. And this theme especially has a few historical documents from the past. Similarly, I think each of the narratives go on about unfurling the narrative of the making of NCBS and its research stuff. Also, I think I was just saying that I was glad that Pradyumna is also on the call, one of the developers who worked with us on this project, but right now is pursuing his master's. You could see, I'll show you later over the period of time. So that's the narrative themes, and among the narrative themes also, so there was the format of the narrative itself was more about how to let the user navigate through the archival material in the form of a story, rather than having just a listing of stories. So you would see in between the narrative, you would see this gray text with this play icon. Each of them are oral histories or oral history recordings. So while you're going through the narrative, you could play this recordings, and you can continue to read through the story. This was one of the ideas, and then every block of text or the narrative piece or section would be associated with either one image like this one, uh, or a gallery of images, and audio or a video. So all of this communication between Venkat and our team was the crucial part, because it was not just going to be a list that we would import in some backend and that would render, but it is a story, and the story has its own order of these materials occurring. So that's the part of the narrative, and at the end of each of these narrative themes, you would see an image reserve, which is basically a gallery of images that didn't feature themselves in the story but still relevant for the theme. And then there is a audio reserve, which has a list of interviews. And so this is about the narrative, and I think I can go into the sandbox. So sandbox is our tools that we add, like it's a collection of experimental tools for analyzing and presenting archival collections. So when we look at data from especially this data set, I would say that Venkat had seen that there is an element of time, space, people, which if we are able to present it in that way, would bring about much more interactive and also immersive storytelling. So so we explored a lot of tools, but meanwhile, because we were also working on 3D reconstruction and all these other things, so we had some idea about a few things, but we had to fix all of these things, within within a frame of time. I'll first start with space tour. I think that's much more interesting to me to get started with. This this is a panorama. It's a 360-degree image of 360-degree image. This picture was taken by Pradyumna, and it's a picture of Obaid Siddiqui's office. So the theme was like Obaid Siddiqui's office, lab, and the spaces that was at NCBS. And then there was the curator who had worked on curating the content for this presentation. So when we saw that, we saw that it's a very nice fit to use with this sort of a presentation where you can capture images in a 360-degree camera, such that you can navigate in that space in a much more realistic way. And then you can have these annotations on the space itself that is linked to the content.
This was also a critical moment because this lab doesn't exist soon after we captured. This was preserved as used by Siddiqui, and now it's all transformed into other purposes. So
Maybe
so
archives is this room.
Yeah.
The archives. That
Part of the archives is this room now. There is a basement entry from the other side. But the point was this: the moment that we captured was critical because that was how it was being used by Siddiqui, and then finally it was converted into an archives of the whole NCBS. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Dinesh. So the material that's linked is what you see in this left panel. There is a curatorial note, then there is a audio, and then there is this image. And then there is also you can navigate. So from this Obaid Siddiqui's office, you can navigate to the lab, and that would load the panorama from that laboratory. So this would lead back to the office where we came from, and there you go. Something is very funny. Okay, so this is a space tour. We took about four views that we call, or four angles from where we could cover the entire lab. And then there was interesting this laboratory equipments and all of this, and the curator is narrating or describing these things in this audio. So this this presentation we used. I would like to also touch upon, like, how we made this and all those things if people are interested, right? I mean, so like this little bit of one second. Yeah, a little bit of learning of HTML, CSS, or JavaScript. Even I was very novice at that point when we were building this, and we built this using this is all just front end, what you're seeing right now, like, meaning most of the work is programmed in the front end. And we used a library called Panelum.js, which would allow us to use these panorama images and build this presentation. Pradyumna, now that you are here, would you like to add anything about any nostalgic moments about working?
It's almost like an archive of your work, Pradyumna.
Is it still here? I don't think so. Okay, I'll just continue. I think if he comes back, I'll let him know.
So Bhanu, there's one question. Could you repeat the name of the library you used?
Yeah, I can type it out.
Mm-hmm.
So if people, I just posted. It's called Panelum JS.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we can go on.
People should remember that most of the software will also get dated over time. We don't know like what we would suggest today, but it was this that days.
But yeah, I ensured, so it's still the same. I just went back and checked all the things that we have used.
No. In terms of if we do it again, will it still?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So this is about space tour, right? Next, I would like to go to Peopleplex. Peopleplex, there's a list of, I think, about 150 or 200 people of whose interview was of whose interviews were with Venkat. Venkat had recorded these interviews. So there were, I don't know. It's not that I remembered that dot was Obed Siddiqui. It just happened. So if Venkat is wondering, I think I just wanted to.
Is he on?
Yeah, he's on. I mean, it doesn't happen like this always. So there is people like this, Obed Siddiqui, the topmost guy, if you have to say, at NCBS. And then also there is people like this, GH Mohan from the staff at Animal House. So there is a within this institution, they are all related to each other, and we had a lot of brainstorming around how shall we go about if we have to visualize this data for people. And most institutional people analysis, if you have to do, you would end up with some sort of a pyramids or some sort of a hierarchical visualizations, and or even the node graphs with really big accumulation under some nodes, most of the institutional archives, right? But we wanted to leave it as an exploratory space where people can come and explore stories and the connections.
Also, I think that also such a graph would be dynamic. Now, if it was done like how we want to do it, if you click on any of the links, it can actually show you all the stories that connect Mohan and Siddiqui or in between people. That's where we want to go.
Right. So about so exactly. So about where we want to go, there is another interesting tool. I think it's the right time for me to just point out to that, so that people who are interested can look this up. This is called Graph Commons. So I've used the same data set over here to visualize the same Peopleplex thing. Like I said, the organizational nature, you can see as soon as you open the graph, the three big dots are the three big institutions that are linked here, the NCBS, TIFR Center, TIFR. And then, of course, there are all these people. So if you see Obed Siddiqui is here and how he's linked to. So there's a very nice tool to make this sort of analysis visualization. And it allows you to prepare your data in an Excel sheet, like in this format. If you see, this is one table institution. I have few names, Omi Baba Center and the Tata Trust and so on. Then there's a list of organizations. We have 28 organizations that figure in this Peopleplex. And there is 156 people. And all this are what I was able to parse or understand from the narrative documentation. The roles and all of this was pretty much in the story that was done by Venkat. And with these things, I went about to derive some relationships. So the relationships that you would see, like collaborator or friends with, or affiliated with, and such. So I would like I'd ping this link probably for people to use later. That's about PeoplePlex. And the next one, I think, is the most interesting one and very nice one. This is a timeline tool. We have, so if you see, this is a time scale at the bottom, the thing that I'm moving. This time scale starts at 1940s and it goes on about till 2015-ish. So this add all the material. That's why we have scoped it as history of science in India, and you can see there is a lot of material. There is images in the ticker. You can see there's an image icon. It's an image usually, and you can see this image well. So for this illustration, we have used something called Timeline.js. Timeline.js is a open source library by the Knight Foundation. I'll ping the link. But this is very interesting, like, for very complete non-technical users who don't have any coding experience can get this presentation much more beautiful than what I have been able to do here. So all you need here is the data. So if you go to their site, they ask you make a timeline, and if you go down, they'll give you a template spreadsheet, a Google spreadsheet, and I can show you how it looks. And all you have to do is follow these things to make sure that the link works, and then you have to fill this spreadsheet. So that spreadsheet has the structure of data, like you can see here. There's the from date field, the red or maroon headed date fields. Then the gray one, and the gray one, and then there is a display date. So if you don't want it to be looking like say August 5th, 1947, if you want it to look as 15th August 1947, you might do those changes here. Then it will take that up, and then you give the headline. The headline will figure somewhere, say here. This is the headline, and then the description text will come under it. The media will come in a left column. You can go up to about actually customizing the background colors of each slide if you have a certain theme or a color scheme that you want your slides to progress into. After this, there's not much to do. All you have to do is give the link of your spreadsheet to Knight-Lab here, and then you will have a link to your story, which would look like this. Hey Banu, how do these compare to Google Charts? Are they better in any way? So yeah, I would like to go there. I mean, that's a very nice question, Prayan. See, I think there is a lot of tools, but I don't know if anything will come close to Excel sheets and spreadsheets and these things, because they're simple and powerful. Anybody can use them. Yeah, anybody can use them, and you can create really amazing things, like based on however to use. So yeah, go for it. I mean, Google Charts, anything else that works, right? I mean, I vote for that.
No, one is about charting and graphs about data. This is more about holding a story and walking through it. I think that's the only big difference might be. It's not like, yeah, I don't know if it's comparable, but I should check the charts.
Yeah, I wouldn't compare. I think they're all different things. But say, for example, in a use case scenario, right, there will be archivists, there will be developers, there will be designers. There are people with different roles. And when conveying a certain idea, it helps when somebody is able to see what their idea means concretely with the tools that's available for them to use. Without learning all this new stuff, if you're able to do something and then figure out, I think then there is a lot of adding to that collaboration. I'm
So-
trying to look for
Yeah, recently, Anand Tumble thing about Bhima Koregaon, some of the activists wanted to make a timeline, and it was so simple to put it together, and they could just, add to it and keep growing and to make stories. So these are the things that. So we shouldn't forget that we are in a world where it's a collaborative space, right? It's NCBS is behind a firewall, but most of our other works will be like inviting people to contribute, right? And how to curate in a more open way, how to keep the stories dynamic. So this is one example of like where a group of people come together and now they are doing a campaign and they want a simple way to give a timeline with the campaign on what's going on, right? What went on. So, and it's trivial, like you just get all the data and then you see like the history of it and in a nicely presented way. So,
yeah. So that's another example of the timeline that I posted there. So I think we are almost done. I think the last one I would touch is the oral history player. The data we had was for the interview of Obaid Siddiqui by Indra Chaudhary. I think this was yeah. So the main thing was we had the subtitles or the transcript, and we tried to use oral history synchronizer, but somehow I think we didn't get to access the source code and all this last minute thing. So we decided we'll build our own library. So that the main thing was the audio is playing. You have to figure out how to get the transcript to be able to link with that context that the audio is playing at a certain time. So this is the text that is relevant for the conversation. So that's mostly about what's happening in the oral history player. And the link that we were working on with the subtitles, we were trying to experiment a lot of things. First thing that we experimented was to be able to have a bidirectional navigation. That is, when you click on the audio timing, or even if you click on the particular time in the transcript, the audio should jump to that particular time. And then when we redesigned this stuff, we came about with this presentation that you're looking right now, that only the text that's relevant is showing up. So, and then you see Mosaic template. About this, I would like to say currently we are doing a project. It is milli.link. That's the URL. It's a consortium of archives. We are inviting archives to use the services that Milli provides for discovery, annotation, and storytelling. So that's in the making.
So maybe Venkat can introduce the 13 ways briefly and where Milli is going, and after that we'll take questions and where we will be going further with our ideas.
Right. I'll just reiterate what Dinesh was saying. I think now that I'm done, maybe Venkat can add, if you would like to add something about 13 ways.
Yeah, both. I mean, we are showing the 13 ways thing. I think it'd be nice for Venkat to kind of pitch in and say why 13 ways or what it is. And also about a little bit about Milli Link. And then I think we can go more open to questions, and also about future where we are heading towards. Sorry to put you in a spot. Are you still here?
Sure, you sure did, man. That's fine. Thanks. I don't think I have much to add, Banu. I have to say I loved actually hearing your narrative of the website, because every one of us has narratives of our own work, and the way you went through it was a way in which I had not gone through it myself in like more than a year now. So this was a lot of fun. The two things that you asked, one, I mean, I suppose why 13 ways? That was just because of a poem I'd read at some point. Many of you might have perhaps read it. It's called 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird.
I told you he's a storyteller.
So that's really all there was to it. I mean, I think fundamentally it was rooted at the 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird poem is a very simple but very powerful poem that shows exactly what that is. It's 13 ways of looking at a blackbird. And so this was, it was a good tool to sort of emphasize that every archival object has multiple points of view. And an archive, that was one point. The second is, as Dinesh had said early on, the emphasis in this exhibition is on the story. That every archival object is in service of a story, and every story has the potential to germinate archival objects. These are two broad philosophies that I think one has to sort of just use in the space, and that's what we were trying to do. And MilliLink is a small attempt to try and just get together a variety of people, individuals, communities interested in the nurturing of archives. We started this off primarily around, as Bhanu said, developing these three interfaces of discovery, annotation, and narration, building tools for the public. But in addition, we realized that there's a huge opportunity to also start fostering discussions around what is copyright, what is privacy, what is an archive, or what is conservation. So those are the conversations that are going on around MilliLink. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks for letting me speak.
Do you want to add something about Milli?
Like why Milli?
No, yeah, just because that is the coming soon mosaic.
Oh, I just said that. I just said MilliLink is a space where, as you said, is the intent.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the digital annotation. Sorry, the discovery, annotation, narration space. Yeah.
Great.
So Ishita, we can take it forward into where we are going, but it'd be nice to let people ask or whatever. And if nobody has anything to say, we'll still continue.
We'll still continue anyway.
No, I think I agree that this is more of an, we can convert it into more of an interactive session at this point. So if people have questions, you can just put your name or your question in the chat, and we can have you come and, sort of unmute and talk to Dinesh, Bhanu, and team. Anybody has anything? I think what you showed us is is another world for quite a few of us, while you all were talking about it with so much of ease. We are still grappling with these words. Okay, Shishti, why don't you unmute yourself?
Yeah. Hi Dinesh, hi Shalini, and hi Bhanu. I had a question in terms of so I'll give a background for myself first. I am a design student, and I was working on a project which is making an archive for a museum of conflict in Ahmedabad. So my question is that if you are making an archive, archives are usually supposed to be shown from a very objective point of view. And when you introduce storytelling into the archive, and so that basically gives it a perspective, like you are telling a story from a certain point of view. So how do you deal with this dilemma of having being objective to subjective?
I think Venkat is the right person to answer, but our position is archives. What do you want from archives? I think we want to support storytellers to use the archive. So if you saw you have the CMS part of it, you can share. So there are other ways to see what an archive is, and the 13 ways is one storyteller's way of walking through the archive for the 25th anniversary. Right? That's how you should read it. It's 13 ways is not the archive, but Venkat is right here. Maybe he can say something about it.
Yeah, I think that's why I gave the disclaimer. We are not archivists. So I think in that we give away a lot of responsibility to the archivists we are working with to be able to negotiate that space. But definitely, I think coming objective on this thing and all, I think is something Venkat can.
No, but in this world of fake news and wanting backlinks, provenance, and facts and other data and all that, you really want in a way a distributed or a decentralized archive to be behind the story that's coming out, right? So that is one thing that we want to see how to go forward and what is the future for like assisting them.
I think the link is
So starting, yes, sir.
Sorry. I think Venkat has also shared the main archives link, Shrishti, which you can see, which is
Okay.
the archive which you are looking for, and that's the difference that they're trying to draw between the exhibit and the archive.
I got it.
Yeah. And
so-
we have an interesting question on the Google Doc. I don't know who was writing it, but I think it resonates with what I was thinking. Could we hear Shalini talk about the project? Would love to listen to her experience as well. Or Shalini, if you could tell us what your roles were, how you sort of participate.
Yeah. Thank you, Ishita, and hello everyone. So my role, or like we were like quite a few persons, like Banu said, like, but we are not archivists. So I was not developing the front end part like what Banu was showing, but like the real back end for it, like what it takes for you to like do the Excel sheet. Like we don't know like how many iterations we would have done with all the data. Like since we were not archivists also, like, so we had like many people who were working on just for the Excel sheet, like to prepare that Excel sheet. Like we had to like tell them what it is, and we had to collect data from Venkat, what are the audios, the text. So we had to do many images, like, so we had to see like how that will fit into what you are seeing now. Like, so there were many hundreds of iterations. Like, I don't know, we have many backups also. Like, I still have that one hard drive full of like data with many versions. So we had to like sort out all these things to fit into what like now you are seeing. So I also how do you host this? Like, how do you deploy this on a server? Like, so my role was also on the administration part. How do we deploy it on the server? Like, what do you need? You have to calculate the size, speed, and the time that, like, if you have seen like the timeline, the audio thing that the Banu was showing. So we had to like match with the server speed also. Like, how do we calculate what do we need for this to deploy? So basically that was my role playing there, but like it was quite challenging, and it was very interesting also, because like for the first time we all were working on this archival project, and like it gave a like great experience. Like you have to like
when you deploy an institutional archive, there are many deployments before that, office-wide deployment, wider like test deployments, and everything Shalini takes care of. Like, she's a server admin also. So yeah, I had to add something because she's very humble.
Yeah, so exactly. She's very humble and she doesn't want to say everything, but she was managing about 3 to 4 people who, 2 of them were very new. They from designer background, but they were helping us out. And so much of this to and fro in making them understand, or first ourselves understanding that, oh yeah, this PDFs needs to be converted to images because the developers want it in image format for the presentations to look nice. These decisions were putting pressure in her operations as well in dealing with people in getting this many versions of files, and then they had to go onto the server live, and the order, and then we along with Venkat, we had come up with this mechanism to identify these files in the narratives order. We had come up with a tagging schema, and this schema gave Shalini sleepless nights, I think. And I still remember, I mean, there were so many.
It was all for like, it was very critical that like we had to like do this. And it's just not us, like we had like many other people also like working with us, and they were new to it.
Yeah.
And we have to make it was like Banu said, it was quite a lot of pressure on them as well.
But yeah, I think the sleepless nights part, I think everyone had to go through it, including Venkat. So
Thank you. We have a question from Freyan. Freyan, would you like to unmute and ask it yourself?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to know a simple thing. Are there parts of the source code or the entire thing anywhere on, like, is it open source? And are any parts of this modules of this on GitHub, or do you intend to make them? That's one thing. That's a rather straightforward one. But I also wanted to ask, I was just typing, that what do you think is the biggest strength in having taken this approach, which is so data intensive and programming intensive in a way, as compared to many of the traditional ways of going about looking at that same set of material?
thanks. Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting question. The data intensive and the programming intensive, definitely, but that was the only way for us to go in the given time.
The data intensive is inevitable because there is somebody other than us, in this case, Venkat and his team, who would deal with the data part, So archiving means like there is a document or an artifact or something that has to become digital and come around. And then there is this, hey, now is the time I want to, it's 25 years anniversary, we need to go, deploy this, make it an exhibit in such and such a time, right? Yeah. So it's not like we have a lot of choice in like, no, the data should be like that, data should be like this. It's just, it's all like firefighting mode, right?
Yeah.
So that's also a reason why we had to sometimes develop our own thing. Otherwise, we would just not do it. Right? So, but one thing is we are an open source group. So every library that we have used is open source, right? And the content management system is open source, and anything that we develop is also open source. Is there a GitHub?
I've posted.
Yeah, we have posted the GitHub link. So yeah. Thank you for that question, though. Yeah.
Thank you,
Are
Freya.
you a developer, Freya? Are you a developer?
No, not at all. Very far from it, but interested.
Okay, you're welcome if you want to develop it.
Thank you.
Dinesh, can I just add a note to what you said? Do we have time?
Yes, we do. Please go ahead.
So, I mean, everything that Dinesh said, I sort of second. The only addition I'd like to make to that is there is a choice, of course. You're right, Freyan, that we could have only done the WordPress component of this website. In other words, there would be a text narrative. There is a text narrative. So, of the 13 ways that you see, 7 of them are primarily text narratives with embedded images, audio, and video. There is, to some degree, a conscious decision here because, and this kind of ties into what Millilink is trying to do, which is to build an environment for storytelling, wherein each of these tools are open source tools. And if we are able to create this, do this in a structured way, all these tools are available to the public as widgets that they can use for their story. In the end, nobody will care about the widget if the story is not strong. So, but sometimes a story may demand a particular kind of a widget that a WordPress text narrative will not function. So the intent here is to see what tools can work best to drive home the narrative that you wish to say. A peopleplex only works to illustrate in a very visual, explicit way that this animal house caretaker is connected to this flight technician through these narratives. So there is that sort of complexity that we were trying to work towards. That's all.
Thanks.
Thank you, Freyan. Thanks, Venkat. In fact, I'm just going to pitch in with one question because I think it's connected. How does somebody identify which widget works? So, Venkat, this is in response to what you were explaining. Because we all know these tools are out there. We know we want to tell the story a certain way. So what is the method or process for somebody to pick the right tools? Do you try it out, or is there another process to go about?
I leave this to Bhanu, Shalini, and Dinesh's genius.
No, sometimes we have to kind of convince Venkat, this is a good tool. Yeah. Because we're also, like I said, firefighting at the same time. And Pradyumna's case is also very interesting because he was already doing a 3D project with libraries on another project of ours. And it's felt like this is the most obvious thing, if we want to preserve Siddiqui's lab, just capture it, let people roam around and click at certain points and get into
The story.
yeah, the story, right? So it's also like a time and the timing of like what else was going on in our thing, and we were too excited to kind of push some of these things. And on that term, we should say that given enough time, we would do our own tools because nothing else is out there for the way we are going about. And some of the tools we are making is like since NCBS we are still working on.
Yeah.
And the Millie is taking it further, and so I don't think that, like, if you look at our own context, I don't think the tools are done and made by somebody else for us, right? We can use a lot of libraries, but in the end, I personally don't think there is any work lost when you do your own thing, right? And yeah.
And I think one more thing I would like to add, Ishita, I think designers have a lot of tools in figuring out what widget goes into what. Your design thinking and all of that backgrounds allow you to figure out what is needed for this part of the story or for this story. And if given freedom that implementation pressure is not on them, then I think there is you have all the answers basically. You know what you need, you just have to get the person to get it done. That's the critical part, I think, more than figuring out what's the widget, finding who's to get it done for, understand what I'm trying to convey, and will it continue through the implementation and come out the same way, or will there be compromises and negotiations? There will be always.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Aparna, you had a question.
So this is the second time in the past 2 months I'm learning about the Timeline.js, and the first one was in my coursework at NYU, where we have an entire course dedicated to metadata, of course, and information science. So we used a lot of examples from LOC and NYPL, which are obviously open source, and I believe the Timeline.js output is dependent on whether we have metadata or not, which is sometimes not available in India. But I find it interesting that it's put to use, by Janasti for NCBS. I would just like to be more curious on, what are the other institutions or libraries in India using it currently or are open to being open source with their data.
That's an interesting question. I think Knight Foundation's work into getting storytellers the tools that they need to make impressive, immersive stories is there. I mean, but I don't know what to answer about, what institutions have chosen to use or not about this thing. But it's definitely a good fit as far as we see.
Yeah, because I think it requires a lot of outreach and advocacy for, towards libraries to, open up to this concept. Because over here, as a candidate and, moving image archiving, I have just learned that, all the television broadcast archives in US are also turning towards Timeline.js to curate stories online, especially during the pandemic right now. So, I think it might require more outreach in India. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's the nice thing about having libraries and having put some work into research for these things, right? Knight Foundation does that quite often for journalism and journalistic and storytelling needs. And Venkat may be wondering, how much money it keeps going on and on and on. But when you look at one Knight Foundation funding grant, it's like, oh my God, that much money. We are nowhere near that.
Yeah, but I think maybe it's about time to maybe reach out to all the libraries in India to try to, put their resources online, possibly. Yeah. It's a tough call.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me personally, I wouldn't care about the institutional adopting of open source tools, but the space that we are working in, community archiving, community knowledge, and these places, definitely we want to push and show the possibilities of what is available there already, not that we have to build them from scratch.
Yeah, and as community, we are in a hurry all the time, right? How many of us just end up using Zoom today? Knowing like that's the one industry that's like, need to be kind of reflected upon at this time and date, right?
Yeah.
But with all the good reasons, right? What if the audio doesn't come through to somebody, because you worked so hard to bring a group of people together? What if, right? So you kind of expect that you have a good community with you, but you need to care for them than they need to care for the community needs.
Yeah, but I think still, like, Timeline JS is much a better option than going for Google Arts and cultural institution where they would end up taking your copyrights.
Yeah. But that's the thing is, I think the disconnect is the infrastructure part, which Shalini was explaining, the server, the file storage, access, caching, this, that, delivery, fastest. I think all that will scare people away. I think currently that's the space, I think, which is a scary space. The other front end part and all is easing in people. I think you can get started quickly. That is there, but the infrastructure end is even though it's going, it's all corporate owned, big, huge things, right?
It's better to invest in your own server than relying on Google Art and Culture institutions, right?
True that.
Yeah. And if I might pitch in, I think it's also the seriousness of the project or the data that one is talking about, right? It is at the scale at which you are working, because a lot of individuals or younger teams I have been in conversation with, for them it's a far-fetched dream to even think about setting up a server or getting to that space. So you understand that yes, you need to manage your own data and think about making it open source available, but do you really have the wherewithal for it? I'm just thinking aloud, just to add to this conversation.
But I think that's part of the entire game plan, that if you really want your digital curation to happen at your own, will and your own terms and conditions, I think this investment is necessary in that case.
Yeah, true. In fact, Dinesh, Bhanu, if you sort of feel like, if you would like to talk about your work in Bidar, Shreyas is also here. We can ask him to pitch in, put more people on spot.
So yeah, good. Shreyas is here. So what we are trying to do in general, as a general line of going forward, is to see like what it means for this quote unquote curation to come into community hands, right? So, and if you think of it, it's like really hard problem, like an NP complete, So there are many things that come about, right? If you release your curation, like if Venkat says, no, I want community to participate with the NCBS archives. Right? First is like, I mean, who's Venkat to talk about, he's open for community to participate in NCBS things, right? So then who is the NCBS, right? What do they want? But that doesn't stop from communities saying, no, I have a story related to Siddiqui and NCBS and my experience and how I want to tell that story to a certain audience in mind. So the question is, can they use the archive independently? Right? Can archive be facilitated with some APIs, with some ability to walk through that, discover content in there, but it's not part of the NCBS archive. It's a third-party storyteller, right? If I can browse, if I can see things, why can't I build my story based on this stuff? Right? And that's the starting point. But if you go towards communities, there's quite a lot that we need to look at. And we put out one of the things that we are working on is like, if you collect a lot of audio files, right? How do you discover things in an audio? How do you navigate? If you have 1,000 audio files, like how do you know, oh, that is that singer singing or how do you connect that singer singing to another something that you want? What is the hypermedia? How do we create this hypermedia in a like a linking stuff within a certain archive of media, right? So maybe Shreyas, you can say something. I think it'd be interesting to hear about the whole Be the Storytellers. Because ground up, see, going top down, we want to make stories from archives. But when you go bottom up, stories are first. It's all stories. And then what? How do we bring them into an archive? That's the other very challenging aspect. Are you there, Shreyas? Okay. Oh yeah. Go on.
Sorry, I missed that part. What was?
So we were just giving a brief about the Beather project, and Dinesh just added that, coming from institutional archives where it's top down and archive comes first or something like that. But in the community archive space, the stories are first. So how do we get it to bubble up into
an archive?
Archiving and archival.
Sure.
But we thought you can give much more better context to Beather area.
Yeah. So this is the work that we are doing with the team at Genesto, that is Dinesh, Shalini, Sanket, Banu. So the idea is, just to kind of give a background, we've been trying to kind of work with communities and look at what community archiving means in the Dakkani region. And then until now, largely we were relying on off-the-shelf kind of tools that are available. So like, for instance, say Omeka is there, so can we do something with Omeka? If there is Scalar, can we do something with Scalar? But then what came out of working with Dinesh and team was essentially to see how can we really look at a sort of an archive which can cater and also available for the communities in a locative manner. So I think they can explain what a mesh network means. So what we tried, or rather what we are doing in Beather, is to set up this thing called community-owned Wi-Fi mesh, which is a local mesh network which covers a certain area. And in Beather Old City, there are several performative practices that are there in terms of, like, say if you go to a dargah, you will find women who are khidmatgars who sing songs at different times for different occasions, or Bhuteru community who are essentially like, worshippers of Bhavani Mata, but then their songs also are very, very, in a way, philosophical, kind of gives a certain kind of meaning through their songs and performative traditions. So the idea was essentially to kind of say, how do we create a certain platform for these communities to put their performance or build an archive of their own work, right? So that's something which is happening in Beather. Now, a bottom-up something like this will require on both ends, right? So trying to kind of work with communities to work with them to understand how these archives can be made more, edible for them, because sometimes the tech language can be way too vague and abstract. And on the other hand, also kind of, trying to see what needs to be done from the tech side. So it's a very interesting kind of a collaboration that can take place between communities, practitioners of different kinds, to see what can come out. And it's purely like, experimental, it's extremely playful. The way Dinesh and team have also kind of, they design these kind of devices using open source hardware as well, using Raspberry Pi or Pi Zeros. you make your own recording equipment. Typically, when we archive, we go with these heavy recorders. Now, making these recording devices, and maybe Dinesh, you guys can show the enclosures.
Yeah, Shreyas, we're just taking it off the shelf.
So how do you kind of make this more accessible for communities to come forward to do these things, rather than taking the role of an archivist or a tech professional, and also always trying to solve something, but how do you kind of present this also on ground in such a way that it doesn't really intimidate or overwhelm communities? There he has another enclosure with him. Yeah.
So, yeah, Shalini is going to explain both. One is the first thing that she did, and now she's working on something called a webinar Pi. Because of the COVID, we need small webinar stations in small groups around, like in rural and other areas. So now that Pi, which was a recorder, can also be have a little screen and become for a small group somewhere remote. So how it works is it's all in a mesh. So if this is almost like an alternate overlay over the internet, an open source overlay. Yeah. Go on, sir.
So the first we thought, when we thought of designing it, like this is a Pi recorder which just does the recording. So I'll just open and show it to you. This is one enclosure. We have there's a button over it. So when you press 1 and you have a headphone attached to it, there are spaces for it. So when you do this, you can start recording your voice.
Shalini, if you could show it in the screen, which is Dinesh, TV Dinesh, you're showing it into yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So this is one design that we did. So I'll just open it and show you what is inside this enclosure. So we have a Raspberry Pi. This is a Pi Zero, and there's a battery attached to it, and this runs a USB headset, and these are the buttons and LEDs. So when you the operation is basically this is a recorder, just a recorder. So, but after this is a pre-COVID thing that we wanted, when there is a network, how do we do the recordings, and how can we store the data? But during the lockdown, and we realized how do we virtually connect to these people? What's the way because these devices cannot go physically there, but how do we do conferencing with them? How do we interact? So then, so that gave an exposure, and then we prioritized our thing, and we started doing this with a display.
We cannot go physically.
We cannot go physically, but how do we virtually connect with them from here?
By
sending these devices. So this is one a version of which has this display, and this back you can see there's a Raspberry Pi attached with a Pi camera over it. So. And so that's how we have been trying video conferencing over this, and we started doing it, and it's a little experiment that we have done it.
Thank you guys so much. Yes, do you want to continue finishing what you were saying?
Well, I think that's pretty much it. I don't have much to kind of add there.
Okay. Bhanu, Dinesh, you all have anything more to add in terms of, is there more to future from what you showed us, or anything else about community archiving?
Yeah, there's basically quite a lot of things. What we're trying to do is to see what it means for the low literate people who are not literate in spite of school or whatever, who cannot read and write, to be able to be first class publishers on the web. Right? If you can imagine that, that's our first catch that we are trying to do, and then to percolate it through. We have other techniques like renarration, how somebody else can help these people to publish in the way that their community wants. This is like an ongoing work, but that's fundamentally what we're trying to do is like, now that we have recording devices, right? So we have moved a long way. We've come a long way since the printing press. For once in the human evolution, can we do record and play of human voices, right? Instead of saying you have to write so people can read, you have to be a king to get it inscribed on a stone, to, you know, all these things, right? So for the first time, so now how does this change the world is what we're looking at, right? How does it give authority to the last person, a tribal, a rural, without saying, hey, go get education before I can talk to you, right? So, or before you can be interesting for me, right? So that's the thing.
But yeah, that just to add, that revolves around to your thinking out aloud problem also, Ishita, that yeah, how do we break these barriers of digital barriers that we have created, that computer is a complicated thing, or all these things, that server is complicated, or whatever else. It is all preconceived, or it's our biased ideas, and somehow it's possible to break it, and we believe that.
Oh, before we end, if you're ending, I want to request everybody to see if anybody is there wants to work with us.
Yeah, sure. Right.
No, we are not ending. I'm just moderating the conversation. We have been able to sit through until 7:30, so we have 12 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. We're not in a hurry. But
right.
yeah, I would just go back to what Bhanu was saying, or even Dinesh, you were saying earlier, because these are my two questions. A, about the lack of digital literacy. And honestly, it has nothing to do with whether I live in a mansion or I live in a hut. I feel I am not as digitally equipped, and I usually reach out for help. And second is a lot of infrastructure that is required for these systems to work. So, right now, I'm just grateful that it rained so heavily and power didn't get cut. I am saying that, so I can't even imagine the chai wala bhaiya downstairs, right? So if he was to now add to community archiving, sorry?
You mean Modi?
Chai wala bhaiya.
Okay, that was not the interpretation I hoped, but fine. We are on record, so I'll go back to saying. So what I was saying is, yes, what is the power of these systems, which sort of cuts through these hierarchies or iniquities? Because I do understand it has the power, but that's something I am still struggling to understand myself. That what if today there is no power? Then having a server, does it make sense? Will I be able to do anything?
I feel like, if it is up to the people to kind of champion their own little ecosystem to get things working, they'll be more effective than just saying, when are we getting electricity? When are we getting something else? The government is not doing something else. Nobody is helping us, So these are all like interconnected, but I'm not honest when I just say that, but it's like a lot of me says that, So
right. I understand. Yeah, I understand what you're hinting at. Aparna says she would love to. Shrishti says she would love to collaborate. So you're finding people who want to work along the nation.
I'm glad I mentioned.
Yeah, I would definitely, like to explore options, because a lot is happening over here in the US, and I will be back in India next year. So I would definitely, like to exchange some conversations on how it works, and maybe bring in some of the learnings I get here, I can bring back to India as well.
So yes, Bhanu, we will be sharing details towards the end of the series. We'll just take everybody's permission and share contacts across the group.
Yeah, we are giving permission, like in mass.
Okay, on record. Thank you. Right. Gayatri has a question. Gayatri, do you want to go unmute yourself and ask them yourself?
Hi, I'm Gayatri. My question was partly answered when you answered one of Ishita's question. So my question was, how do you begin to find these threads of stories in the pile of information, or the list of information that you have, and then how do you finalize that these are 5 or 6 ways in which you will represent the different kind of stories coming. There could be some stories which need a different representation, but they'll be like 2-3 stories. Then how do you do that? Like, how do you decide that through these stories, through these representations, you will tell all these stories?
Yeah, so this is the hard thing, like, there are several aspects in this. Like, if you look at what makes an archive, you will see a lot of it is to do with privacy, regulation, knowing who allows what, and, So this same thing is valid when you do ground up also. But the game is so different. The playground is like completely, new. So one of the things that we do in our current work is to have like a file recorder, which there is no login. You just press the button and talk. It's almost like a community device.
Okay.
And in that case, you don't have like, oh, it is Gayatri's. We cannot guess. As a community, we can guess. So we are already looking at an annotation system, which is like a blockchain saying that we recognize this is Gayatri. It's not like Gayatri says it's Gayatri, right? And then to take that audio and open it to a small group where they have an interpretation on this audio. First of all, the audio is a publication, but we are going to not publish outside the immediate network without acknowledging who else was there, what is the context, and all that. So we'll have a little header and a tail for the audio that's going out, giving a little bit more information. That would be like a standard template kind of thing. Okay. But then what we do is to open up this story for re-narrators. So whoever looks at, like if you're doing a ragi mudde recipe, right? So somebody might have have pictures of ragi mudde in their own, like brother might have, or a mother might have a place where they used to go related to the story, to a field where they take these photographs of how ragi is grown, or lots of things, right? So now there is a drag and drop culture, like you just point out to this, and without reading and writing, they will just be selecting parts of the audio and they will drag photographs to it, right? So now it's a second narrative, but it's a more visual narrative, right? And somebody else could do subtitling, text, what's it called?
Captions.
Yeah, captions for it. Or they might write paragraphs for it. So everybody in this is an author or a co-author, right? As it comes out. Yeah, so this is kind of a very simplistic process that I expressed, but you can imagine like how many stories can come out of one ragi mudde narrative, right?
So basically, you provide one kind of framework where people can, or anyone can come and add their own experience.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Also to just add to this, I think also what we are looking at is people who are not into writing and reading as a regular habits. Like in our group here in the conversation, many people would be writing essay or anything. Your first cut is not the cut that you're going to publish. But over a period of time, you will do many edits, and you'll figure out what's the narrative thread, this, that, reorder. This internal process has to start in terms of audio narrative or whatever narrative, I think, for people to speak, listen, figure out, and hey, no, I think I should have done this. No, one more take. So I think also this process itself is pretty much thing that is taken over by the writing people.
Even for the Milli work, we kind of reprioritized it by talking to Venkat on, because of COVID now, there's so many migrants and their stories. Let's collect the stories and see something out of this as a hypermedia network and decentralized. There's so many storytelling archive repositories now, story repositories. So what is the tool set that we want if we want to start connecting these things? Not I at Banu or Shalini, but we as like this whole group, for example, right? So that's there.
Can I add an example here?
Yeah. Who's it?
Shreyas.
This Shreyas.
Oh. Yeah, sorry, Shreyas.
No, I mean, since we're talking
without
about
your kids in the background, I can't even recognize you.
Yeah, just to kind of add to what Dinesh was saying, right? Just to give an example, now different communities have different ways of kind of sharing what their interpretation is. Like, let's take a song, and a community could be comfortable doing it in certain ways. So, give you a little more concrete example. Again, the project what we work with Dinesh and gang, right, in Bidar. So the idea was to kind of see how we could work with the communities and see what they're most comfortable with when it comes to annotations. So so then when during the workshop, it was very interesting kind of behaviors. That is, we work with 3 groups, one which is a Shaira, the second one which is Bhuteru, and the third one which is Kumbara women, right? So each one of them picked up their own ways of annotating. So one used to draw, the other one used to kind of make something with Play-Doh or clay. The other group chose to write. So I think that's also what, Dinesh, if I understand, that's what you were saying, that annotation can vary based on what the communities are more comfortable with.
Yeah, so that's the first thing, right? But then nobody is saying like this annotation is going away forever, right? Certain annotations may not be interesting for Shalini, but it would be interesting for Banu. So how do we accommodate these kind of discovering what they want, but not like eliminating somebody else's ability to discover something that they're.
Okay, thank you, Gayatri. Thank you, Shreyas, for pitching in, Bhanu and Dinesh for all these amazing responses. Is there anybody else with any question? We could take one last question. We have about 2 minutes. We have a lot of people who want to work, collaborate with you all, Dinesh. So
No, that would be our pleasure. You don't know how small our team is. So.
Yes. So as soon as we can clear the permissions, we'll surely share all these details. This is for all participants also who have requested. Okay, so with that, we'll call this one a close. I will hand it over to Pallavi.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dinesh, Bhanu, and Shalini. And thank you, Venkat and Shreyas, for pitching in. And we would love all of you to join us for the next meet as well, which is on the 13th with Smriti.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.